I love the way that the chocolate breaks down into these little pieces inside the ice cream. It looks so good. Hi everyone, I'm Claire Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. Summer has arrived and I have a delightful summer dessert to show you. It's a frozen ice cream pie. It's called a Grasshopper Pie. It combines everyone's favorite ice cream, which is mint chip, with like a cookie crust. It's super nostalgic for me because it's something I grew up eating. It's so good. I was first introduced to Grasshopper Pie at summer camp. I went to sleepaway camp, and it was like, I think every 4th of July. I remember that they served Grasshopper Pie, which I never heard of. And then the version that I became familiar with was the version I had, which was like green mint chip ice cream in an Oreo crust. Delicious, so good, like exactly what you want to have on like a summer day. So this is my homemade version. I did actually look up the origins of Grasshopper Pie, and this is not the original. The original is more of like a mousse pie. This is like the ice cream version, which is a variation that exists. And I'm gonna make my own homemade mint chip ice cream. I am gonna use a little food coloring because I do feel like it has to be green. I just want to see that color a little bit. It's a delicious ice cream. And then we're gonna also make a cookie crust. I'm not using Oreos. I made my own chocolate wafers. For the homemade ice cream, I have heavy cream, some granulated sugar, some semi-sweet chocolate, 6 egg yolks, milk, vanilla extract, salt. I am using food coloring because I want to just tint it a little bit green because it's Grasshopper Pie, so it has to be a little green. If you don't want to use that, you can just leave it white, basically. And then I have organic peppermint tea. This is my trick to making the flavor of like a classic mint chip. And then for the crust, I have, these are homemade chocolate wafers. It was like such a gut punch when Nabisco stopped making famous chocolate wafers because they make such good crust. So I made my own. So this recipe, actually check out the episode for Tim Tams where I make this chocolate wafer recipe. They're really super tasty. And this is gonna be my new sort of homemade chocolate wafer recipe. You could make an Oreo crust if you don't feel like making your own. Then I have for the crust also a yolk plus 4 tablespoons of butter. I'm gonna add some salt to it. I have heavy cream here. I have other heavy cream reserved because I'm gonna serve that on top. I also just set aside a chocolate wafer or 2 for crumbling over the finished pie to serve. This recipe uses a custard-based ice cream. So I am gonna cook the mixture. So I have a saucepan here. Then of course I have to spin the ice cream. So I have an at-home ice cream maker. You could really use any type of ice cream maker you have. And then a couple other like smaller items. I'm gonna use an instant read thermometer. I need a bowl and a strainer for the ice cream, a spatula. I have a rolling pin for crushing up my cookie crumbs. This is a frozen pie, but we are gonna bake the crust. Some recipes just have you like mix like Oreos and butter and press it in and freeze it, and that's fine. But I'm gonna kind of take a little extra step for my version. For the first step in making our pie crust, I'm gonna crush up my chocolate wafers. I baked these last night. Basically what you want is like a very crisp, sort of dry cookie. You could use graham cracker if you wanna use a store-bought cookie, or just use an Oreo. So I'm gonna crush these up. The reason I'm not using Oreos is because I don't really want the Oreo cream in there. I like keeping the sugar in the crust really low. And these are not a very sweet wafer. So I just kind of broke them up with my hands. I'm putting them into this bag. So I made a swap. I made the pie last night and froze it. And I used this bag to crush the cookies, so I just saved it. You could put them in the food processor, but to me it's kind of a lot of parts to wash for like a pretty simple thing you could do by hand. So I'm just using a rolling pin to crush them up. And I want fine crumbs. So while I'm gonna continue to crush this, what I wanna do is, I have 4 tablespoons of butter. I'm gonna just melt it directly in my pie plate in the microwave. Unlike a lot of crumb crust recipes, this one has an egg yolk, and I add it because it's just like a really effective binder, and it helps to, when you bake it, just keep everything like well adhered. So I'm gonna add my crumbs. So this was 7 ounces of the wafers, by the way. I'm gonna add a big pinch of salt, and then the yolk. So mix until everything is homogeneous. You want the crumbs evenly moistened and the yolk distributed. So I like to kind of take my fingertips and push a thicker ring of the crumbs around the sides of the plate, and that kind of becomes the walls. And then I have a layer on the bottom. What often happens is that the bottom becomes a lot thicker than the sides. It can just be sort of hard to gauge And now I'm just gonna rinse my hands. And another trick that I have for making a really nice, even, smooth crust, I like to use a 1 cup measure that has straight sides. You could use like a water glass, anything that has a flat bottom and straight sides. And I just use it to kind of gently compact the mixture, starting on the bottom. Crumb crusts generally are forgiving. That's like if you feel like it's just not even and you're like annoyed and it's not working, just start over. You can't like overwork it. It's already baked. So I'm just kind of working it, pressing it down around the bottom. And once the bottom is smooth and there's no gaps or anything, I'll go up the sides and kind of going at an angle to meet the angle of the pie plate and compressing it against the sides as well. Okay, so I'm just going back over one more time and just compressing a little bit with my finger on the opposite hand, the edge of that crust. This is ready to go into the oven and get baked. We're gonna bake it until basically it's firm to the touch. It's a lot harder to gauge doneness in something that's already starting off dark brown, but you'll also smell it. It'll be kind of fragrant and like cocoa-y. So 10 to 15 minutes. I'm gonna stick it in and set it for 12 minutes. The crust is done. It smells very cocoa-y and buttery in here. I'm gonna pull it out, and now we're done with the oven, so the oven can go off. So this has to cool. I'm gonna let it cool on the rack, and then when it's no longer hot, I'm gonna actually put it in the freezer. And that's because this is the receptacle for the ice cream that we're going to make, and if it's already cold and like freezer temp when the ice cream hits, it's gonna help us set the ice cream, and it's not gonna like melt and fill in, you know, get sort of like the crust kind of wet. It's not what we want. The base of the ice cream that we're making is a custard base. There's different styles of ice cream. This is a common one. It uses eggs, specifically egg yolks, and we're going to flavor it with peppermint. So a note on mint. A lot of times you'll see people making their own mint chip ice cream and they're using fresh mint, which is a great idea. I love that idea. Use a fresh ingredient. You bring some of like the grassiness and freshness into the flavor. The problem that I have with that is that most fresh mint, like the mint you go and buy at the grocery store, is spearmint, not peppermint. And to me, like mint chip doesn't taste right if it's not peppermint. If it's spearmint, to me, it like gives me toothpaste a little bit and it just tastes wrong. So I really want it to be peppermint. Now I can't call for fresh peppermint because it's just like not, it's more of like a farmer's market thing. So my genius hack is to use peppermint tea, which is just 100% dried peppermint, like mint, you know, dried mint leaves. Make sure you're getting like the herbal tea though, that's only peppermint and not like a green tea that's peppermint, that has like other tea added to it. But so this is basically just dried peppermint leaves, and we're gonna steep it in our custard, which we heat up. So it gives me that like almost like menthol-y, like cooling mint flavor. And you don't get the freshness, but to me, this is what mint chip is supposed to taste like. So this recipe uses heavy cream and milk in a 2-to-1 ratio, which is like pretty standard for an ice cream base. So I'm gonna put my 2 cups of heavy cream in my saucepan, then my milk. I have 3/4 of a cup of granulated sugar. I'm gonna put a 1/2 cup of it in with my dairy base. And then what's remaining, I'm going to mix with my yolks. I'm gonna add it to this bowl right here. To my dairy, I'm going to add a big pinch of salt. It really helps to bring out the flavor of ice cream, and it's not gonna taste noticeably salty. We're gonna start infusing our dairy with the tea bags. So I have this over kind of low heat, just so it's, you know, kind of bringing it up to like a gentle simmer. I'm gonna put in my 4 tea bags. So yes, you could use peppermint extract. That is an option here. And it will make a perfectly like delicious mint chip ice cream. But I really like, I don't know, I think you get better flavor from the tea bags. Sometimes the extract can be pretty artificial tasting. And here you're still using actual peppermint. It's just dried instead of fresh. If you can find fresh peppermint, great, use that. So I've put in all 4 tea bags. We're going to bring this up to a very gentle simmer, slowly. Then we'll come back and I'll show you how to do your eggs, cook the custard, make sure you have an instant read thermometer because it helps a lot.
Minty milk. Beauty is not caused, it is.
That cream and milk mixture just came up to a simmer. I'm gonna turn it off. And now I wanna let this steep. You can kind of press down to make sure that the tea bags are submerged. One of the tea bags, I must have like torn a little hole in it because the tea has started to spread out, but it's okay because we're gonna strain the custard anyway. So now we just want this to steep, and I want the mint tea to really infuse this mixture. It already smells like super minty. I'm gonna let this sit for about 10 minutes. And then it's just to really like help to pull out some of those flavors from the peppermint. And then we're gonna finally make the custard. This part, we wanna sort of take our time here so that the flavors can really infuse. Again, I'm using 4 tea bags because I'm kind of going a little bit faster. You could even like chill this overnight and make the custard the next day, and you could really extract a lot of those flavors. It depends on how minty you want it to be. So I've let the mixture infuse with the tea bags. I'm going to now take them out and make sure you squeeze them really well to extract any of the liquid. Now we're going to do this step called tempering the eggs. So I have my 6 yolks. I'm gonna use a spatula. I'm gonna add the yolks to the bowl with that remaining, it's around like approximately 1/4 cup of sugar, and whisk this together really well. This is called blanching the eggs, where you mix it with the sugar. And tempering basically means that I'm going to slowly increase the temperature of the eggs and bring it up by streaming in the hot like dairy mixture. And this is just because if I were to add the eggs directly to this, I risk cooking them and getting little like curdles, which I don't want. So I'm going to slowly stream in about 2/3 of this mixture, whisking constantly. Okay, and then I'm going to add everything back to the saucepan. And now I'm ready to cook the custard. So I want to get this back on kind of medium-low heat. And the idea is to cook this so that the eggs cook. So I'm going to use my instant read thermometer, and I'm going to whisk constantly. I'm going to cook this until it registers like around 170 or 175 Fahrenheit. So let me see what it is to start. It's already going to be hot. So I'm at 145. And it depends on the number of eggs. There is not such like a noticeable thickening that happens when you reach that like 170, 175. It thickens quite a bit though after you cool down the custard. I'm at 178 actually, so I can turn off the heat. So that means I know that my eggs are cooked. I'm going to remove the saucepan from the heat and bring it down to my work surface. So now I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla extract, a couple teaspoons, and I'm also going to add my food coloring. So the mixture is like a little bit brown from the tea and a little bit yellow from the yolks. So I have some green food coloring. I'm going to add a couple drops of green. Start with 3. And then a little bit of blue, and blue helps to kind of balance out the yellow from the yolks. Just a tiny bit of blue. I'm adding more food coloring than you would think, just because it kind of almost looks like matcha. It's like a matcha green now. It's gonna be pretty pale when it comes out of the ice cream machine. So I think this is good. I just want to taste it and see how we are as far as mintiness. I'm gonna pour this through my strainer. And it's a pretty fine strainer, which is good because not only do I want to catch any little possibly curdled egg bits, but I want to catch any loose tea that kind of escaped from one of the tea bags. So you can see there are little bits of yolk and the peppermint tea that's not going to make it into our final ice cream. So now I'm just going to stir this until it's cold. This will probably need another 5 minutes or so to get cold. So my base is cold. We're ready to start spinning it. I'm going to put it in my machine. So I'm going to pour it in. This will take about 20 minutes to really freeze in the machine. While that spins, I want to do 2 things. The first thing I want to do is put my crust in the freezer so that it's going to be cold and it's a good like cold landing pad for the ice cream so it doesn't melt. Then the second thing is I'm going to melt my chocolate. So this I'm going to drizzle into the ice cream once it's almost frozen. So I'm going to microwave this. I'm going to basically microwave it in 20-second bursts on low power, just stirring in between until it's smooth and melted. It's more of a pistachio green than a mint green, but it's hard to get any other color with the yolk, with the yellow from the yolks. So now I'm ready to add the chocolate. It's melted and mostly cooled, and the ice cream is like 90% of the way there. So now what I want to do is just drizzle the chocolate around the surface of the ice cream, and the motion of the churning will kind of like pull it down into the ice cream and create these little tiny, like fine pieces of chocolate. And that's what I want. So that's when you see stracciatella ice cream, that's basically what the technique is. And it makes these like very fine, just fine little pieces of chocolate that melt in your mouth when you eat the ice cream. So the warmth of the chocolate kind of loosened up and melted the ice cream a little bit. So I'm gonna put the lid back on, and this is gonna churn just for a few more minutes until it's a little bit firmer. And an end point that I look for is that it's almost starting to like pull away from the sides of the ice cream machine. So I think it'll be like another 5 minutes or so. I'm gonna grab my crust from the freezer and we're gonna fill it. I'm also grabbing a little leftover container because it makes sort of like, unless you really want like a very like mounded pie, it makes a little bit of extra ice cream, which is kind of awesome because then you get to like sample it before you serve the final pie. So I'm gonna turn it off. So I'm really just gonna start scooping the ice cream into the shell. The ice cream is such a nice texture. I'm gonna just smooth it into the crust. I'm gonna put this back in the freezer. I'm gonna let it freeze solid and then cover it with a little plastic wrap. If you leave it uncovered, sometimes it can like pick up like a freezer taste, but I'm just gonna let it kind of harden for maybe an hour or two before I put a little plastic over it. And we just wanna let this freeze solid. So if you can, I think making it a day ahead is really helpful because I feel like a solid 8 hours in the freezer is what it needs. For the final assembly, I whipped a little cream, about a cup, and then I had just a couple leftover chocolate wafers, and so I just crumbled them into little crumbs. It's just a little topping for finishing the pie. And I'm gonna grab the version that I made yesterday and froze overnight, which is very solid. One thing that I think would be really nice with this and would make it kind of extra special if you're serving this for a holiday is if you did like a little hot fudge to serve with it. I'm gonna just scrape the whipped cream over top. So you can see the color is that kind of like faint mint green. I think it looks great. If you don't have any leftover chocolate wafers, you could also do just like grated chocolate on the surface. So I'm gonna cut myself a slice. The knife really slices through the ice cream in a way that like I can just tell it's gonna be like just such a nice texture.
Is it gonna spring out and fall on the floor?
I hope not. See like that cross section with all the little chocolate pieces? Frankly, I could have done more whipped cream. I think this could be used more. The crust cut so clean. It's frozen, but it's not hard. I'm really hoping this is like the grasshopper pie that I remember. I just remember it being like 4th of July and like sunny and hot, being in the water and then serving grasshopper pie. And it's just like, this is, everything about this I love. This is truly excellent. It's so unsweet in a way that is good, because if something is too sweet, especially frozen, it's like you get flavor fatigue and eventually you kind of stop tasting it. This has like such good mint flavor. You get the bitterness of the chocolate, the textural contrast with like the little bits of crunchy chocolate that then kind of melt, the whipped cream on top. It seems really simple, but actually there's so much going on. Something that like I want to eat now and I would want to eat if I were a kid also. Today's episode is really about kind of like the ice cream making process and technique, but it's also about nostalgia for desserts. So if you wanted to make this because you just want to eat it, use like your favorite brand of store-bought mint chip ice cream. Use an Oreo crust if you don't want to make the wafers, or if you can't find chocolate wafers. It's not really about like every component being homemade. It's just about it being like a delicious, cold, like dessert you can share in summertime. I hope you give it a try. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. You want a piece?